Good morning, everyone. It's Dan Sigouin with Kappa, the Director of Education. I'm joined with Tracy Elliot from the Foothills Camera Club, and he's one of my assistants with the education team, and we're on site in Elbow Falls in the Kananaski. We're taking on a small project here where we're going to go to a location and we're going to have the perspective of different photographers going through their workflow on a location to get some ideas and just thought processes that people go through on site and see what kind of learning there is from that. For this composition, I'm going to use a really tight view, 85 millimeters with the 70-200. My ISO is ISO 100, nice and low for no noise. I do have a variable neutral density filter on the front, and it's about halfway. I want to get about a 1.5 second shot, 2 second shot. It'll create nice patterns in the water and keep the color, and it'll give me a good range for the histogram to work with. So what I like about this scene is that there's natural framing with the rock patterns. The rocks are going at a diagonal to the falls. There's outflow coming out at as a diagonal that's going to create a nice white line. And the framing of the rock faces are just keeping my view right here. I don't have anything in the frame that I would consider distracting or doesn't need to be. Everything is positioned really well in the frame, composition lines, and I'm gonna hit the shutter. Okay, so I'm looking at the shot that I just took, and I'm gonna pan around the screen just to make sure I've got good sharpness and good detail in the rocks and the snow. Everything looks good. I like the leading lines coming to the falls. The histogram looks good. In post, if I wanted to add a little bit of contrast to the waterfall, I can do that. So there's good detail there. The creamy look to the falls is good. There's nice detail there. And I really do like the color that's coming in the water from the mountains and the springs that we have here. So pretty happy with the shot overall. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna set up a different shot, zoom in a little bit closer, and I'm gonna switch my camera to monochrome and just take a black and white version of a closer view of the falls and just play with a long exposure in monochrome. So Elbow Falls is a popular location for people to come and visit and photographers to come and take photos. And looking at the scene, I've been here several times, and Tracy's been here several times, and we're interested in maybe some different opportunities on site. And so today we're gonna consider looking at a viewpoint that's much lower down in the river scene here, and we're going to use the river as a foreground to act as a element into the shot. We're going to test how cold the water is, and we have to do a bit of a river crossing to get to the other side. So this is going to be a test of our fortitude, I think. So we made it across the river. The water is probably up to our knees in a couple spots. It's not moving super fast. It's definitely cold. So it was a good adventure getting across. As we walked up the scene, we took a look at the snow and the interesting lumps and bumps in the ground. And what really took my eye was the nice curve of the ice and the rocks that we have here. So what I've done is I've approached the scene not too close to have boot tracks in the snow, and I've put a wide angle lens on my camera for this shot, and I'm just gonna see what it looks like incorporating this curve. I still have the river coming out on the right hand side. With having my wide angle lens, it's a crop sensor lens on a full frame camera, so it's a bit of an issue that I have. The perspective of the waterfall is quite small, but I'm going to take a couple shots here, see how I like it, and get this framed in before I walk into the snow with a different lens, because now I don't have to worry about my boot prints in the snow, and I've kept it pristine for the moment. So I've come closer to the waterfall. I've got the rocks in my foreground, and right now I'm just playing with the height of my camera and the tripod. I want to have the rocks and then water and then the waterfall, but I'm trying to decide how much space I want in between the rocks and the waterfall, because on back of camera it's a bit of a dead space. So if I go lower, I can make the rocks look, I can minimize that empty space in between the immediate foreground and the waterfall. So I've moved my camera down lower, and I've moved just a couple steps forward, and what I've done is I've been able to eliminate that empty space in the middle until the rocks are nice, sharp in the foreground. I'm using f11, so everything is nice and sharp from here to through the plane of focus. The waterfall is sharp, and I don't have this empty water that's not really doing anything between the immediate foreground and the waterfall. So having that lower perspective helps keep the attention to the detail that I'm trying to focus on in my shot. So being on the other side of the river now, this is a different view for me. I've never been on this side. I've always wanted to come to this side. So I've taken a wide angle shot, I've taken a mid-range shot, and now I'm gonna take a long lens shot of the waterfall. I'm gonna throw on an ND 1000 filter. My camera settings haven't changed, but I just wanna do a really long, milky, dreamy shot of the waterfall here. So this time I've lifted everything up. I'm gonna zoom in closer, really tight on the ice and the water, and just get a long exposure shot.
Hi there, it's Tracy, and out here with Dan at Elbow Falls, and we're doing the video, different photographers, different perspectives on the shots. And so now it's my turn to get in front of the camera, and the video camera, that is. And so basically, as Dan was shooting his stuff, I was kind of looking around and scoping out a spot where I thought might be an interesting composition, and I sort of came up with this one. And what I'm looking for here is a bit of foreground interest. I've got the rocks out in front of me, and kind of what Dan had talked about before too, looking at that sort of middle ground, kind of closing up the middle ground and not having too much empty space. I'm going to go a little bit tighter to start with. I've got my 24-70 on. I haven't really figured out what focal length I want to shoot quite at yet, but I'm going to sort of compose that in a bit. But mainly what I was looking for was perspective at this point. So getting a bit lower, closing up that middle ground, having some foreground interest, and having the falls in the back here. And hopefully we'll see how that shot turns out. Okay, so now that I've sort of got my composition set up where I like it, I'm going to start looking at camera settings and how I am going to expose this shot and what I'm looking for out of the shot. Number one is I want a good depth of field, nice, good middle of the range aperture for some depth of field, sharpness in the lens. And so that's going to give me, I'm going to shoot at f11. I'm going to keep my ISO at 100 to give me my best quality, not a lot of noise, no noise. And so then I'm going to dial in my shutter speed to whatever I want to get a correct exposure. And that's going to be 1/20th of a second at this point. That's going to give me a good overall exposure. I'm on a tripod, so I don't have to worry about camera shake or anything like that. The next question is that going to give me the effect of the water that I want? Is that going to give me sort of that silky smooth effect, which is what I like to go for, what I kind of like on this kind of shot? For me, the big thing here is the contrast in textures. I really like the silky smooth water contrasting with the sort of sharp, rough texture of the rock and the ice. And so it's not quite enough. I'd like to go probably 3, 4, 5 seconds to get a really silky smooth look. So that means I'm going to have to put a filter on, drop my, so I can drop my shutter speed and get the longer exposure that I want. So I'm going to do that. All right, so I've got my filter on here. I've got a 10-stop filter, which drops my exposure by 10 stops, so quite significantly. That's going to give me an exposure, an equivalent exposure now at 51 seconds. So it's actually quite a bit more, but I'll get really nice, silky, smooth water. It's going to look really good. So generally you use an app to figure that out. Put your base exposure in, put the ND filter in, it'll calculate out your exposure. I set my camera to bulb. So I can control that exposure. I've got my remote release here. And so now I just basically start my exposure, start my app, and it counts down, and when it's done, I should have a good exposure. Okay, so I got my shot here, just reviewing it on the back of the screen. Looks pretty good. The water actually looks really nice, what I was hoping for. I might just tweak the composition a bit, and I think this is a big thing for a lot of photographers, is shooting and reviewing your shots and sort of reviewing that composition or things you want to do. And of course with digital, that makes it really easy. We can see the shot right away and tweak composition, tweak exposure, those kind of things. So I might just move a little bit, just playing with some of the way the leading lines come into the bottom part of the frame, maybe a little bit more foreground. The one bottom corner with a lot of white snow is just kind of blank, so I might move a bit there. So just tweaking the exposure or the composition a bit and playing with some different angles and positions. All right, so moved the camera just a little bit, not very much. A lot of times it doesn't take much to change your composition. Just even 6 inches, a foot will make a big difference in how things rearrange themselves in the scene. So I've just moved over to, moved right a bit, taken out some of the snow on the left-hand side, a few more rocks, and I like this composition pretty good. Looks good, so I'm going to do another exposure of that, and we'll see how it turns out. So another 51 seconds. All right, so one other thing I wanted to talk about as well too was the lighting out here right now. And again, landscape, nature photography, you kind of get what you're given with the light. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen. It is clear facing the falls, but the sun is behind us right now, behind a bunch of clouds. So it's actually quite kind of overcast, bright overcast, which is actually pretty good light for what we're shooting right now. It's a fairly contrasty scene to begin with. We've got some shadows, some dark areas of the rock, plus snow and ice that are quite bright. And if the sun was out and shining on the waterfall, we'd have a lot of contrast. Really, really bright highlight areas that would be blown out. And to try and keep detail in those shadow areas would be really hard exposing for those highlights. So the lighting for what we're doing right now is actually quite good. It's nice light, the contrast is lower, and keeping those highlights manageable so they're not getting blown out, which is quite nice. The other consideration that I always think about, and depends on the photographer, depends on the shot, but one thing I always keep in mind when I'm shooting too is is this shot going to be in color or black and white? And I shot a lot of black and white film back in the day. So for me, the decision for black and white is when I'm shooting. It's not just a matter of pushing a button in Lightroom or in editing and deciding then. I pretty much have it in my head when I'm shooting that it's going to be a black and white shot. And of course, we'll talk about that more in editing, but we always shoot in color and we convert it later. But for this shot, for me, it'll probably be black and white as well too. Pretty sure it will. Again, it brings out the contrast and the textures and the tones, that kind of thing, which is what I'm looking for. So most likely, I'll be converting this to black and white, and that'll be in the next video on the process of how to do that. We'll look at the processes of each photographer in their editing styles as well too. Hi everyone, thanks for watching the video today. We had a great time out here. How was your day, Dan?
My day was awesome. Out in nature, we had great weather and good temperatures.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. A little windy, but I think we got some good shots, and hopefully you like the video.
Thank you very much.